Hey guys, it's Olivia with Salon Calico. I have Alex here with me today. So we have gone on a journey with Alex's hair. The first time we did like a shag, right?
Yeah.
Like a shag.
Yeah, with like a pixie bang.
Yep, with a little pixie bang. And then from there, we did full mullet. And it was a little bit shocking for Alex at first.
A little, yeah.
Yes. So give it about 3 weeks to marinate, and it went cool from there. So it's grown out really nicely. So what we're gonna do today is we're going to do a stronger color pop right at the front of the hair here underneath, so that way we get a little bit of the bang hanging over. We're gonna do just a little bit of a bang trim today, so that way we're not shortening this up too much because it's actually grown in really nicely. And then we're gonna add some actual stronger like pops right through here, and we're gonna go through a nice, like a very pale, pinky lilac, just because her hair, because it's darker, pulls a little warm with a little golden tone. And if we go straight in with a lilac, sometimes it fades a little greeny. So we want to make sure that it fades true to tone. And with this haircut, instead of doing kind of like scattered highlight all over, just because there is so many like different levels to the hair and there's so many layers, we're gonna do more like isolated chunks, so that way it adds depth to the haircut. Okay guys, so what I'm doing is I'm doing back-to-back foils, so that way we can have a nice solid pop, because all of this hair is going to be sitting on top and it's going to break it up a little bit. So we need this to be more solid, so that way it actually shines through. And what I'm doing is I'm taking these nice thin sections, and one trick is that if I put my comb here, I should be able to see fully my comb through the section. That's how I know that I'm not taking too large of a section. This will be dependent on the thickness of their hair. So if they've got really, really dense, thick hair, you want to take an even smaller section. And then if they've got very fine hair, you can take a wide section. Her hair is fine texture, but a medium density, meaning she has a normal amount of hairs on the head. They're just very silky. So I'm going to take about this size, and I'm going to fold my foil over so that way I get control. I'm going to lift up, and I'm going to make sure that I adjust my corners tight to the head. I'm going to load my product, but I'm making sure that I'm not putting it at the part. I'm putting it right underneath, and I'm feathering it down like this. And making sure that I go through and I really, really thoroughly saturate this section. Your lightener should be thick and pasty, so that way if I leave my hand off of the foil, it's sticking. It's not so wet that it's just sliding right off, because if you make your lightener too watery with too much developer, it's actually going to drop down the strength. So you could be using a 30 volume like I'm using here on her, but if you were using a really watery, overdeveloped 30, it would act more as a 20, and you wouldn't get a very even lift. So you want to make sure that it's nice and pasty. And then as you can see, when I get to the top, to feather it out, I'm taking just the tip of my brush with no extra product on it, and I am feathering to the scalp, just like that. Keep in mind, lightener does swell a little bit, so you don't want to go and put the lightener right on. You want to put it right underneath, about like that. And then the folding technique, I'm going to fold once up. I'm going to fold once up. Notice I'm not zipping the bottom. I'm not squishing it like that, because that will move the lightener away from her hair. I'm just going to lock it in at the side. And where you lock it in should be the size of your section. So let's say your section's getting smaller, you're gonna lock it in at a smaller size. So this should be the size of your section. Okay, so I am going to be using Pulp Riot color. I'm using a base of blush, a little less lilac. I'm cooling it off with a little bit of Nevermore, and just to keep it more of a neutral as opposed to like really poppy, I'm adding a tiny bit of sea glass. And as you guys can see, I'll show you what this looks like all mixed up, but this is gonna make a really, really cool pinky lilac color without it being super, super bright. Because if you look at the pink here, to me, this is way too bright. So these colors are gonna help to soften it. Okay, so I have washed her out. I use Fanola shampoo to kind of like pre-tone out a little bit of the warmth. And I have my color nice and mixed up right here. But because this is a lighter toned color, two things. So oftentimes with pastels, if you go pastel on the day, 2 shampoos, it's gonna disappear. It's gonna be a total waste of money. So what I like to do is I like to do a little bit more saturated and let it fade into a pastel. And secondly, I like to fully dry the blonde before applying the color. Just because the water molecules are taking up space in the cuticle, and this sits right on the edge of the cuticle, and so you want to make sure that you fully dry the hair so that way you're not diluting the product before you put it on. Okay guys, so here's our final product. As you can see, it's just a little tiny bit more saturated than a true pastel would be. So that way there's a little bit more longevity, but we texturize out the top a little bit and the fringe. I wanted to make sure that I didn't cut this too short up here, but I wanted to make sure that in cutting the fringe that I kind of left the border right here a little longer, so that way that would peep through, and then kind of texturized her natural color over top of it, so that way it doesn't look like a harsh line sitting on top of it. It looks a little more messy. She naturally has a wave to her hair, so I just kind of waved it out in the way that her natural hair would kind of fall. And then I finished it off with Undone Volume Matte Texture Spray by Amika. And here we have it.